In the face of the suffering of the world, personal suffering, other people's suffering, kindness is the only answer. Not kindness for a reason, not because it works, not because it stops anything, not because it heals anything on a certain level, not because, do you know what I mean? Not because. It's the only answer. That's like down on the, and I've contemplated this, which is why, you know, I write so much about kindness. I never thought I'd be a sort of a kindness practitioner, because I don't think of kindness as a thing. I don't think of kindness as something that we do or that I do. It's not a doing action. It's you know what I mean? It's not me being kind to somebody, although that arises, that happens. But actually kindness is the natural outcome of the realization that life is suffering. As the Buddhist said, life is suffering. And that's the whole Buddhist treatise right there. That incarnation is suffering. Form is suffering. Because of the very fact that all of it, animals, us, are born into manifestation, and then it experiences all of the issues that manifestation brings, and we can't fight that, we can't argue with it, because it happens just of its own accord. And then the process of disintegration happens, the process of exit from what we've arrived at, however that is, whether the experience here has been exquisite, like a flower or something, it still has to decay and go. Still, it's gonna go. And to realize that in itself is suffering. And then you add the human dimension to it, and life is suffering. We suffer. And we spend our time trying to escape suffering, and we spend our time trying to understand suffering, and we try to blame our suffering, or the other's suffering, or the human crisis. The human crisis. Wow. And it's big. You know, we're a species that allows suffering on a scale that is unimaginable. We cause suffering on a scale that is unimaginable. And we suffer so greatly in our own lives, in our individual hearts, and we try and understand it, and we try and offset it by saying, well, I'm not suffering as much as that person, and that person's not suffering as much as that person. It could be a lot worse. My suffering isn't so bad. And still the suffering goes on, because it doesn't answer it, because there is no answer to suffering but kindness. That's all there is. Because it's natural when you really feel the full weight of that realization. I don't see what else there is to talk about. What else is there to talk about? Because kindness then becomes not an action, although action arises from it, because you're unlikely to go ahead and cause more suffering if you realize the nature of life is suffering. Just going to become pretty neutral, really. Neutral. Maybe it's neutrality, is kindness. No more. No more. I'm not playing the suffering game. because we each play a part in the suffering game, don't we? We're all, we add a little bit of suffering to the suffering pot. Here's my little bit. Oh, and I sort of tasted how beautiful kindness is, how easy it is, how when I've been in my own struggles with the mind or an argument with reality, always arguing with reality. That shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening. I'm scared of that. I don't want this to happen. The endless. That to give all that up, abandon all of the mind stuff, and just sort of fall into the openness of that kindness without doing anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to be kind to know kindness. I haven't turned into some sort of kindness freak that goes out and tries to help people. People get the idea that kindness is trying to help people. It's not trying to help people. You're not trying to help anybody. Just trying not, you're not doing any more harm. Allowing things, maybe it's that, this is my investigation as well. Maybe it's just allowing things to be as they are without trying to change them anymore, without trying to explain them or intervene, because we have an intervening quality. We want to stop suffering. I want to stop suffering. I want to stop his suffering. I want to stop that suffering. I want to do this. I want to do that. And the realization that you can't, that's what came up in the book for the doctor in the plague. He couldn't. He was incapable. Nobody was capable. So you're faced with a choice. Do I resign? And there were some people who went into deep resignation. This is terrible. This is terrible. How can this be happening? How could God let this happen? How could we let this happen? Why can't we do something? What's wrong with everything? Everything's bad. And he just is there. It's a sort of presence. Very, very heart, isn't it? I mean, you can't do that level of kindness unless the heart is wide open. I guess in many ways purged of its own stuff. I think you can't, if you're holding on to some grievance, if there's still a little bit of a knot, if there's still a bit of tightness somewhere or some residue of, something that hasn't been unpacked or looked at or resolved or dissolved, then it's hard to embrace fully the fullness of kindness. But that's not to say you can't do it. But kindness is, I think it's probably one of those things. It's like openness or, anything like that. It's like a homeopathic, it's like a remedy. You let it in, you take it in. It's like a medicine, isn't it? That's the great thing about some of these things. So, these are metaphors, these are images, and they're powerful. Once you hear that in a way, in the circumstances, if they're the right circumstance, and these are the right circumstances, then it goes in and starts to do something inside. We're not the kind of beings that we think we are. We're much more energetic beings wrapped up in this skin, wrapped up in our senses that have become sort of beguiled almost, that we're these fixed human beings, but we're not these fixed human beings. This is a much more mysterious, energetic experience. And I've always believed that words and the images that they conjure up for us are like metaphors and medicines that go in, which is why the shamans and the medicine people would often work in the way with putting something into you, putting a medicine somehow into you. Because my old teacher, the wild guy of Wales that I've talked about before, yeah, he was a word man. His stories and words, because he knew that they go into the deeper energetic body. And so kindness, when it's not treated in this glib, ridiculous way that we have with language now, because we're also superficial, that they've got no idea whatsoever what they're talking about most of the time, except in an angry way, when you're throwing darts. But to head off in the other direction and be able to kind of start talking about these qualities like tenderness, openness, kindness, grace, these kind of things, they are exquisite beauty. They're exquisite medicines for the soul. And so it is with kindness. I couldn't think of how I could be living the life that I am, and with all of the mysteries that have got me in a motor here, and all of the difficulties that we faced in coming over here, if we just did it with like ego alone, or we did it with force alone, or do you know what I mean? We did it with like, wow, we had to do it with such kindness to ourselves, because we got stretched. We got stretched and stretched. And then just when it seems like, I can't do that, I can't take it, I can't do this, kind of, oh yeah, I could just be kind then, couldn't I? I could just be kind to myself. I could just be kind to the world. I could just be kind to the experience. And see what door that opens up. And it's always opened up a door to a deeper peace, a deeper understanding. That's what this whole teaching with the Moda, this is what it's all about. It all ends up at kindness. Openness is kindness, isn't it? It has to be tenderness towards one's experience of life. Because if you fight with it all the time, you end up like them, like people who I don't know. I feel for them. I feel for people. I really feel for people, because when they're being so vitriolic, and all I see is suffering. All I see is their suffering, and they're trying to inflict their suffering on the world in the guise of righteousness. It doesn't work. It's just making the world worse. You're not helping anything at all. And I don't, it's like a despair. They're not seeing that that we as a species, or somehow, have reached such a point where we're going to fight with each other to the end, instead of what we could do, which is just offer each other kindness.